It's May 1st, 2004. At around 10 p.m., the air just started to carry that warm Texas spring humidity that sticks around for 6 months. The kind that makes your uniform shirt stick to your back even after the sun's gone down. I've just wrapped up a routine traffic stop, speeding ticket, nothing dramatic, and I'm parked in an empty parking lot on the northeast edge of a university campus. Back then, we still wrote paper tickets by hand, so I'm hunched over the steering wheel, scribbling final notes on the back of the ticket, engine idling low. I've always driven with the windows cracked, even at night. No AC blasting, no radio cranked. You need to hear the world when you're out there. Sirens in the distance, arguments spilling from apartment windows, the sudden screech of tires. Those little sounds that can turn a quiet shift into something else entirely. And then, it comes. Pop, 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 pop. Several sharp cracks, not fireworks, not a car backfiring, gunshots. Close, too close. My head snaps up, heart rate jumps. Almost immediately, the radio crackles to life, another unit broadcasting, voice tight. I've got shots fired! Sound really near to my location. I don't wait. I drop the pen, throw the car into drive, and start rolling towards the sound. As I turn onto quote-unquote Fry Street, the main drag lined with bars, student hangouts, late-night pizza joints, another officer is already on foot, sprinting northbound, flashlight beam bouncing. He spots my cruiser, waves frantically, 212 Fry! It's at 212 Fry! I flipped on the emergency lights, no siren yet, didn't want to spook anyone, and punched through 2 red lights, tires humming over the pavement. I clear the second intersection, and there he is. A young man sprawled in a driveway, body twisted at wrong angles like a puppet with cut strings. Completely still, no movement, no rising chest, just laying lifeless, catching the glow of the streetlights. I kill the lights, throw the car in park, and step out, hand instinctively drawing to my holster. The night suddenly feels electric, every shadow a potential threat. I'm the only officer on scene, but I can hear the sirens coming, yet they're still a few minutes out. But before we go any further, I want to take you back. Because this moment, this lifeless body didn't just happen. It was a culmination of something that started years earlier, at least for me. A calling I felt deep in my bones. And if I'm going to tell you how that night ended, I need to tell you how the whole journey began. Rewind to 1999. I'm working the graveyard shift at a convenience store. That's when the cops started coming in regularly when the calls stopped rolling in. They'd grab a free coffee, departmental perk that we gave them, and we'd chat. Small talk at first, then real talk. I got to know their names, their beats, their war stories. One night, a sergeant, good guy, steady voice, leans on the counter and says, "You know, you'd make a pretty good dispatcher. Ever thought about applying?" The idea stuck. I'd been a Christian for almost 6 years by that point. Romans 13 verses 1 through 7 had become foundational for me. Governing authorities are established by God, the sword bearer against wrongdoers. Even before I was a believer growing up, I understood the police were the thin line keeping chaos at bay. The barrier between folks just trying to live their lives and those who would take it all away. Some people today call that thin blue line a symbol of brutality, racism, covering for bad apples. They say there are no good cops, but back in 1999, that interpretation hadn't really taken root yet. The phrase has its origin from the Crimeans' War Thin Red Line, Scottish soldiers in red holding against the Russian cavalry. Then LAPD Chief William Parker adopted it for the police in the 1950s. Joseph Wambaugh's books and Errol Morris's documentary cemented it in the culture. It only started turning sour around 2010 to 2015 with the rise of certain activism. But for me, in 1999, the thin blue line meant something noble, God-ordained work, whether the officers knew it or not. And I wanted in. Problem was, the dispatcher pay at that time was actually less than I was pulling in at the store. Weird, right? Retail overtime beat civil service starting wage. Still, the seed was planted, and I applied anyway. And the doors flew wide open. I knew so many officers from those late night coffee runs. Every time the deputy chief turned around, another cop was poking his head in saying, "Hire this guy." I hadn't asked them to lobby. I just mentioned I applied, but they vouched hard. The chief later told me that he'd never seen someone so unanimously recommended. August of 1999, I started as a dispatcher. It wasn't glamorous. Locked room, computer screens, radio console. I took 911 calls, sent units, logged everything. But I was inside the machine. I heard the raw edge of the job, panicked voices, officers out of breath, pursuits, domestics, shootings. I got immersed in that subculture. Loved it. Felt like I belonged. Still, I never thought I could be an officer for myself. Why not? Because in my 20s, any challenge, argument, confrontation would just light my emotional fuse. I'd get heated, defensive, not cool-headed. Police work demands logic under pressure. I figured I'd crack, but one of the officers I rode with one night told me something that stuck. You find it. You get in the groove. You learn when to dial it back. And that planted another seed, and I started catching the quote-unquote bug. I rode along with officers every chance I got. It was a departmental perk for employees. Night after night, I watched officers handle calls with the calm I envied. I wanted that. I wanted to be the one stepping out of the car. There was only one big obstacle. The woman I was dating, who is now my wife, wasn't on board. Not really. And I don't blame her. Every spouse or partner of a cop knows the math. This job can kill you. It's not hypothetical. It's an occupational hazard. She didn't want to have to worry. Nights alone, the phone ringing at 3 a.m., the what ifs. But I felt called, deeply, like this was the path that God had laid out. So after some convincing, I applied, and I got in. 2003, I started the police academy. Brutal, physical, mental, long days, short nights, learning law, tactics, defensive driving, firearms, but I made it. And I hit the streets later that year, and that brings us to May 1st of 2004. I'm standing over the body in the driveway. There wasn't just one body. As I walked closer to the house and further up the driveway, there was another. He wasn't moving either, but I would later find out he was still alive, but would be paralyzed for life. As I continued to follow the path of the crime, I could hear two people arguing. I raised my flashlight and lit up those two people. One still had the gun in his hand. My training kicked in, but my mind was racing. My pistol was already drawn and at my side should it need to be used. I ordered them both to get on the ground, and thankfully they both complied. I secured them in handcuffs, and that's when the cavalry showed up. I got saddled with helping to secure the crime scene while the investigators were called and started working it. Other officers took over detaining the person who had the gun. But I was happy to make a difference and be able to stop anything further from happening. That's what I call the thin blue line. It wasn't my first violent call, but it was the first time I stood in the middle of fresh violence and realized this is why I came. Not for the glory, not for the adrenaline, but for the thin blue line, to stand in the gap and to be a barrier. I still believe what I believed in 1999. The job is dangerous. It's thankless sometimes. It's misunderstood more now than ever. But it's necessary, and for those who feel that divine pull, whether they say it out loud or not, it's a calling. So stick around. Next time I'll tell you more stories, maybe not ones these exciting, but others, and maybe share a little bit more about the academy days, the calls that tested me, and why I still wear the uniform. Until then, stay safe out there.